5 earthquakes time bombs which could devastate the United States, by Andrew Daily Caller on Blended Reality. The powerful magnitude 7.8 that shook Indonesia triggered tsunami warnings and caused massive panic. A risk of a serious Indonesian earthquake and tsunami in the region was well known to geologists. After all, records of such quakes extend as far back as the 10th century, and geological evidence indicated they were comparatively common, but the world was still caught by surprise. But just because the massive quake occurred on the other side of the world does not mean Americans should be complacent. The U.S. has its own of earthquake time bombs to worry about, and each has the potential to cause a lot of damage. Number 1, rumble in the Pacific Northwest. An earthquake would destroy a sizable portion of the Pacific Northwest called the Cascadia area in a massive magnitude 9 earthquake, which would also spawn an enormous tsunami. The question is not if, it is when, they said. In 2011, Japan had the devastating magnitude 9 Tohoku earthquake right off the coast. There is a geological arrangement nearby identical to the one which caused the Japanese earthquake. The Tohoku earthquake and subsequent tsunami was devastating to Japan, triggering the meltdown of the Fukushima power plant. Seismologists estimate there is a 37% chance of a similar quake affecting the Pacific Northwest over the next 50 years, they said. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates that a massive Cascadia earthquake occurs in this area roughly every 240 years. The area last produced such an earthquake in 1700, more than 300 years ago, and the associated tsunami spread so far that it impacted Japan. This unusual long recurrence interval may indicate a substantial buildup of stress, meaning that the quake would be even more powerful and create an even bigger tsunami than when that stress is released. The tsunami spawned by the quake would devastate the West Coast and would substantially impact Alaska and Hawaii, as shown in the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration animation. 2, handling the Great Plains. Okay. We're talking about the Great Plains. We have the mid-continental rift, and if you see the video before this one, you'll please do see it, because that's why we're getting all these, we have magma under there. It's a very large igneous province. Now, in the middle of North America, near Missouri, Kentucky, Arkansas, Tennessee, there is a massive fault which could spawn huge earthquakes in the middle of the U.S. This area is extremely unusual geologically because it's not near a tectonic plate boundary, but still produces some of the world's largest earthquakes for reasons that scientists cannot fully explain. Well, we've explained it. It's what they're not talking about. It's a mid-continental rift, the magma is underneath. The region has been struck by as many as 4 magnitude 7 or higher earthquakes in the last 2,000 years. In 1811, the region was hit by a magnitude 7.5 earthquake, which was felt over more than 2 million square miles and destroyed 5 small towns. The damage caused by a similar event today would be far greater, as the cities of Memphis, Tennessee, St. Louis, Missouri, are close to the area and are very unprepared for such a large earthquake. The USGS estimates there's a 10% chance of an earthquake of magnitude comparable to those of 2011 and 12 occurring within the next 50 years. Number 3, Los Angeles coming superquake. The second most populated city in the U.S. is not a stranger to quakes, but it still is not ready for a truly devastating one. Los Angeles area has a 67% chance of magnitude 6.7 or higher earthquakes in the next 30 years, according to USGS. Additionally, there is a 7% chance of much larger than magnitude 8 earthquake occurring in the next 30 years. And USGS states that such a quake would cause fatalities and $200 billion in damages. Now, 4, shaking in Salt Lake City. This is what we're seeing now. Ongoing for the past, 5 or 6 days now. No, 3 days. It started with a 5.7 boom, and it's still shaking. A 240-mile-long fault runs directly beneath 1.6 million people who live in Salt Lake City and Utah's urban corridor. I thought it was 2.8, but anyway. Geologists have found evidence that the fault has generated several magnitude 7.5 earthquakes. The fault has ominously been silent since 1847, and surveys have shown dramatic buildups of stress which could lead to a quake. Historically, geologists now know that each section of the fault goes off about every 350 years or so. The section of the fault near Salt Lake City last erupted 1,300 years ago, and the last biggest quake near the rest of the urban center was roughly 2,100 years ago, so it's really overdue. Quote, "We're basically due for an earthquake," end quote. This is what Chris Duras, geologist at the Utah Geological Survey, said. He says, "We're really getting right into that zone where we'd expect to see one." And we are seeing that now. Salt Lake City is especially vulnerable to a quake because it sits on top of an ancient lake bed made of soft sediments, which would amplify the seismic waves. Additionally, the region is not well prepared for an earthquake due to their relative rarity in the region. And then we have San Francisco. Number 5, shake, rattle, and roll in San Francisco. The Golden Gate City sits directly on top of 7 major fault lines and is incredibly vulnerable to a major quake. In 1906, the city was struck by a magnitude 7.8 earthquake. Roughly 3,000 people lost and 80% of San Francisco destroyed. It was one of the worst natural disasters in American history. Los Angeles area has 63% chance of magnitude 6.7 or higher, as we said before, occurring in the next 30 years, according to USGS. The city is also vulnerable to the San Andreas Fault, which has a 21% probability of large earthquake occurring over the next 30 years. Now, I will be making another video on Utah because the quakes there are still ongoing, a tremendous amount of quakes. And we've also had quakes south of Salt Lake City in East Carbon City, 2 of them. They're small, of course, 1.7 and 1.7, 2 of them in the past day and past hour. So we have to look at the geology of Salt Lake and also the USGS areas of liquefaction that take place because it's a landfill lake, as we saw before. So I'll leave links below for you for this on Daily Caller and Embedded Reality. Thank you. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.